Imagine crushing out your final cigarette. The smoke clears, the ember dies, and something profound is about to begin. Within minutes, deep inside your chest, beneath muscle and bone, a transformation starts that most people never witness. Your lungs, which have been enduring assault after assault, finally receive the signal they've been waiting for. The poison has stopped coming, and now the real work begins. For years, we've been told that smoking damage is permanent, that once you've hurt yourself, the consequences follow you forever. But what if that belief misses something crucial? What if your body possesses repair mechanisms that modern medicine is only beginning to fully understand? The human body was designed not for endless toxicity, but for cycles of damage and recovery. What if, hidden within your biology, lies an ancient system for renewal waiting to be activated? When you stop smoking, you're not just breaking a habit. You're initiating a biological cascade that reaches into every cell, every system, every corner of your physiology. So, what actually happens when your body realizes the cigarettes have stopped? What hidden processes begin in those first crucial minutes? The answers are both remarkable and humbling, and they start almost immediately. Within 20 minutes of your last cigarette, something measurable occurs. Your heart rate, which has been artificially elevated by nicotine, begins to drop. Every cigarette sends your cardiovascular system into mild crisis. Nicotine constricts blood vessels and forces your heart to work harder, beating faster to compensate for restricted circulation. Your blood pressure spikes with each inhalation, then gradually falls, only to spike again with the next cigarette. It's a cycle your heart has endured thousands, perhaps millions of times. But now, 20 minutes into abstinence, your heart rate begins normalizing. The constant stimulation ceases. Your blood vessels, which have been squeezed tight, start to relax. Blood pressure drops toward baseline. This isn't dramatic enough to feel, but it's profound enough to measure. Your cardiovascular system recognizes the absence of its antagonist and begins recalibrating to what it remembers as normal. The craving you feel is real, urgent, demanding. But beneath that surface noise, something extraordinary is occurring. Your heart is no longer being forced into overdrive. Your vessels are no longer being constricted. The constant chemical alarm has been silenced. This is your body's first whisper of gratitude, spoken in the language of normalized pulse and easing pressure. The transformation has begun, quiet but relentless. By the 8th hour, a more fundamental shift occurs. Carbon monoxide, that silent poison present in every cigarette, begins its exit from your bloodstream. When you smoke, carbon monoxide binds to hemoglobin in your red blood cells, forming carboxyhemoglobin. This compound is remarkably stable, and it occupies the exact spaces where oxygen should bind. Your cells have been suffocating, slowly, systematically, for however long you've been smoking. But carbon monoxide's half-life in your body is only 4 to 6 hours. This means that 8 hours after your last cigarette, the majority of it has been expelled through your lungs with each breath. Your hemoglobin, finally freed, begins binding oxygen again. Oxygen levels in your blood rise measurably. Every cell in your body, from your brain to your fingertips, receives more of what it desperately needs to function. You might not feel this yet. The cravings still dominate, but your cells register the change immediately. Mitochondria, those tiny power plants inside each cell, begin producing energy more efficiently. Your brain, which has been operating in a low-oxygen environment, starts receiving proper fuel. The fog you've been living in, so gradual you stop noticing it, begins to lift. This is oxygen returning to tissues that have been starving for it, sometimes for years. Days 1 and 2 bring what feels like betrayal. Irritability surges. Anxiety builds. Headaches emerge with cruel persistence. Sleep becomes elusive, and when it comes, it's restless and unsatisfying. Concentration fractures. Your hands search for something to hold. Your mind obsesses over what's missing. This is withdrawal in its rawest form, and it feels like punishment for making a healthy choice. But beneath this turbulence, something essential is occurring. Nicotine has occupied specific receptors in your brain, mimicking natural neurotransmitters and hijacking your reward system. Your brain has responded by downregulating these receptors, becoming less sensitive to compensate for the constant chemical stimulation. Now, with nicotine absent, your brain must rebuild its natural sensitivity. This recalibration is why everything feels wrong. Your nervous system is remembering what baseline feels like. Meanwhile, In your lungs, tiny structures called cilia begin to regenerate. These microscopic hair-like projections line your airways, constantly sweeping mucus and debris upward and out. Cigarette smoke paralyzes them within seconds of exposure. For years, they've been essentially dormant, unable to perform their function. But now, freed from constant assault, they start to recover. The cleanup operation begins, patient and persistent. This isn't weakness. This is your body initiating its repair sequence. Within 3 days, something remarkable begins in your respiratory system. Those cilia, now actively regenerating, start functioning again. They begin pushing upward the accumulated tar, mucus, and cellular debris that has been trapped in your lungs. This is when the smoker's cough often intensifies, and it feels paradoxical. You've stopped smoking, yet you're coughing more. But this cough is different. This is productive. This is your lungs cleaning themselves. Your bronchial tubes, which have been inflamed and constricted, begin to relax. The constant irritation eases. Smooth muscle that has been in spasm starts to release. Air passages that have been narrowed gradually open. Studies show that lung function can improve by up to 30% within just 2 weeks of quitting. You might notice breathing feels different, deeper, less labored. Climbing stairs doesn't wind you as quickly. The tightness in your chest loosens. This isn't just comfort. This is fundamental capacity returning. Your lungs are remembering their purpose, their design. The inflammation that has been quietly burning inside your airways begins to subside. White blood cells that have been constantly recruited to fight smoke-induced damage can finally stand down. The construction crew has arrived, and they're working methodically, clearing debris and rebuilding tissue. You're not imagining the change. It's measurable, real, and accelerating. By the second week, if you could see inside your arteries, you would witness something astonishing. The endothelium, that delicate inner lining of your blood vessels, begins to heal. Smoking damages this tissue systematically, making vessels stiff and unresponsive. Healthy endothelium produces nitric oxide, a compound that keeps vessels flexible and responsive to your body's demands. Smoking destroys this ability. Your circulation has been compromised, reduced, struggling. But research documents that endothelial function begins recovering within just 2 weeks of smoking cessation. Your blood vessels become more elastic, more responsive. Circulation to your extremities improves. The coldness in your fingers and toes that you've accepted as normal starts to fade. Your skin, which has been starved of the proper blood flow, receives more oxygen and nutrients. The grayish pallor begins to warm. This improvement ripples outward in unexpected ways. Energy becomes more stable throughout the day. Your body no longer diverts resources to manage constant vascular crisis. The fatigue you've been carrying, so persistent you forgot it wasn't normal, begins to lift. These aren't minor adjustments. These are fundamental shifts in how your cardiovascular system operates. Months of damage, reversing in weeks. The body doesn't hold grudges. It simply waits for permission to heal. Around week 3, perhaps the most extraordinary aspect of your respiratory system reveals itself. Your lungs possess a capability that challenges what most people believe about smoking damage. They can regenerate. Not completely, not if the destruction has reached certain stages, but more than you've been told. The airways contain stem cells, dormant populations waiting for the right conditions to activate. 3 weeks without smoke, and these stem cells begin dividing, differentiating, becoming the specialized cells your lungs need. Damaged ciliated cells are replaced with healthy ones. The epithelial lining, which has been worn and compromised, starts rebuilding. New tissue forms where old tissue died. Your lungs carry, within them, the blueprint for their own reconstruction, and they're following it now, methodically, relentlessly. There are limits to this power. Emphysema, where the tiny air sacs are destroyed, is largely irreversible. Severe scarring resists repair. But if your damage is still in earlier stages, your lungs can recover remarkable function. This ancient ability, encoded in your DNA millions of years ago, activates not because you've earned it, but because your biology is designed to forgive. The construction project that seemed permanently stalled suddenly receives full resources. Cell by cell, breath by breath, your lungs are remembering what they were meant to be. At 30 days, your body's defense system begins to remember its original strength. Smoking suppresses immune function comprehensively. It reduces white blood cell counts, impairs their ability to fight infection, and creates chronic inflammation that exhausts your immune resources. Your body has been fighting a two-front war, managing both external threats and the constant internal damage from cigarettes. It's been losing ground, slowly, for years. But 1 month without smoking, and this changes measurably. White blood cell counts normalize. Macrophages in your lungs, those cellular sentinels that engulf pathogens and debris, regain their effectiveness. Neutrophils, which have been constantly recruited to manage smoke damage, can finally focus on actual threats. Blood tests show inflammatory markers declining. The chronic low-grade inflammation that has been burning throughout your body begins to extinguish itself. You might notice you're not getting sick as often. Colds that would have lingered for weeks resolve faster. Minor cuts and scrapes heal more quickly. This isn't coincidence. This is your immune system, freed from managing constant toxicity, returning to its designed function. Not just surviving, defending, thriving. The energy that went toward damage control now goes toward actual health. Your body is no longer at war with itself. 30 days is not an ending. It's momentum building towards something larger. The trajectory you've established continues far beyond this milestone. At 3 months, tiny nerve endings in your mouth and nose begin regenerating. Taste sharpens. Food becomes more vivid, more complex. Smell returns with surprising intensity. These sensory improvements aren't cosmetic. They're proof of neurological healing, of cells that were damaged finding their way back to function. At 1 year, your excess risk of heart disease drops by half compared to when you smoked. At 5 years, your stroke risk falls to that of someone who never smoked. These aren't promises or hopes. These are statistical certainties, documented across millions of people. The mathematics shift in your favor with every smoke-free day. Cancer risk, which feels like a permanent sentence, actually begins declining. Slowly, yes, but measurably. Every day without smoke, the cellular mutations have less opportunity to compound. Your body is playing a long game, and it's patient. The damage accumulated over years, but the healing, once initiated, doesn't stop. It continues, persistent and methodical, for years after your last cigarette. The cascade you triggered at day 1 is still running, still rebuilding, still correcting. Time becomes your ally instead of your enemy. Your body has delivered its verdict, and it's more merciful than you imagined. Despite years of assault, despite thousands of cigarettes, despite damage you can see and damage you cannot, your biology chooses repair. This isn't about willpower or deserving. This is about cellular machinery that knows only one imperative: survive, adapt, heal. The moment you stopped introducing poison, that machinery engaged. You might have thought you were too late, that the damage was done, that your body would never forgive what you put it through. But your lungs didn't hold a grudge. Your heart didn't refuse to heal. Your blood vessels didn't reject the opportunity to recover. They simply waited. And when you gave them the chance, they began the work they were designed for. Not perfectly, not completely, but genuinely, measurably, persistently. The cigarette is crushed. The smoke has cleared. And in the silence that follows, in the space where craving used to live, something else emerges. Not comfort, not yet, not ease, not immediately, but something more fundamental, a recognition. Your body, which you thought you'd betrayed beyond repair, is working to save you. It never stopped. It was simply waiting for you to stop hurting it. The reconstruction has begun, and it's extraordinary.